We are proud to be sponsored by Kiteworks, a secure content platform for CMMC compliance. Kiteworks is FedRAMP Moderate authorized and helps accelerate your path to CMMC 2.0 compliance. Did you know Kiteworks puts defense contractors on the fastest path to meeting CMMC 2.0 requirements, leveraging the same zero trust framework guidance used for federal requirements? Kiteworks supports nearly 90% of the security requirements for CMMC 2.0 Level 3. This can drastically reduce the effort and costs associated with obtaining CMMC 2.0 authorization. What's really cool to us is Kiteworks has an ongoing bounty program and regular penetration testing to minimize vulnerabilities along with one-click appliance updates. Kiteworks provides unparalleled ease of use with its intuitive web UI, mobile apps, and even Outlook integration. This user-friendly experience avoids productivity disruptions during your CMMC 2.0 implementation. Accelerate your CMMC 2.0 compliance and address federal zero trust requirements with Kiteworks' universal, secure file sharing platform made for defense contractors. Visit kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com to get started today. All right. Well, welcome everybody to Cybercrime Junkies. I'm your host, David Morrow. And in the studio today, we have a really interesting guest, Philip Yumu, founder of CrowdSec. It's an open source crowdsourced security platform. And he's going to walk us through, but it's really cool. He's joined us in the studio all the way from the other side of the world, which is really exciting. And CrowdSec, it's like a multiplayer firewall. It analyzes visitor behavior, provides adaptive responses to all types of attacks. And we know, based on what's in the news, things like this are absolutely needed. And who doesn't love crowdsourcing when we all kind of put things together? Philip, sir, welcome to the studio.
Hey, David. Thank you for having me on the show.
I'm so glad that that you've been able to join us. So, real briefly, just high level, kind of walk us through how you got into cybersecurity and how you kind of came up with this idea. And then let's talk about what it is and what it means for organizations of every kind.
Yeah, so I was born in a little fisherman village. I was not really good at fishing, so I went to Paris, a big city locally, and to learn my trade in engineering. And I met a guy, and the guy was actually one of the most prolific cracker of the time on Atari ST. So Atari ST, for the audience, is an old computer that was very good at gaming. Except, you had to buy the software, and we had no money because we were 10, Right. And one group was actually cracking them for us. So we would have them for free. That was so cool.
So and, when you say, so hang on, I don't mean to interrupt, but when you say cracking, you're talking about like jailbreaking the game so that you can access it.
Yes, they were removing the protection so we can duplicate them and share them amongst ourselves.
As every great security expert started as a kid doing.
Point.
Yeah.
And so, I met this guy 10 years after. He was like, yeah, that was me. Yeah. He was in my school, the same school. He was like, yeah, it was me doing this. Yeah. I was like,
really?
Wait, you're my age. Yes. So when you were doing this, you were 10 too.
So you were 10 years old and you met this guy. And then like a decade later, you came back and met him again. And he was like, yeah, I was the guy that was able to crack into all these games and everything.
That was ridiculous. It was so good. It was just insane. And I was like, so what are you doing now? He's like, I'm doing something in hacking and security, like cracking programs and so on, getting into the systems. And I'm like, show me. Wow. I need to learn that. It looks so fantastically cool. So I started
cool.
Yeah. I started my career like this, and with shoulder to shoulder with this guy, and I started to learn a bit how you penetrate systems. And I became a red team pen tester. And then fast forward in time, I create my company.
Okay, so you were enchanted by the power that this guy demonstrated, right? Especially at a young age. You're a little bit older in your 20s, you meet up with him again, and then all of a sudden you're like, I want to be a red teamer. I want to be a hacker, but for organizations, right?
Yeah.
That master power of being able to crack into things. What types of things would you hack into? Like, was it networks? Was it applications, web browsers? What type of stuff were you getting into?
So the browser thingy came later on. So really, it was like step by step. Back then, we were a lot in Ingress. We had like exposed servers and services. We're a happy few. We knew each other, most of us. And we broke into other universities just to, dredge on other girls we found cute in other places. Nothing bad, nothing, we're not stealing anything. But yet, we knew how to do it. It was interesting. And then the dot-com bubble came in. I had my own company and we had to test those websites. And we're like, guys, do you want to even try to defend them before putting them online? Because it's just too easy. Like, there's nothing to do. Like, you would sneeze and you would get a shell. You would get a full access to the machine. And you're like, and you want to build an empire on something that is made of paper. Well, be my guest, but I'm not sure it's going to work. So we had some few good years like this, but the problem is like service is like you have to hunt for your meal every day. There's no recurring money.
Right. Exactly. And so you're telling me like back in the day when organizations were throwing websites on, you were able to get in super easy.
That was insane. North of 99% of success rate. And then we started to implement things that only were known probably a decade or a decade and a half after, like things like DNS tunneling to hide your connect back channel. When your malware was connecting back to you, it would go through DNS queries, which would be totally invisible. Even nowadays, it would go mostly invisible. So we had advanced techniques. We didn't even know it was advanced back then. We're just using it because it was efficient, And then someone far more brilliant took over this part of the job, which was pen testing, and I did the hosting part, the MSP part, like making sure that it runs. I became a blue teamer because honestly, sticking to red teaming, you cannot have like a private life. You are constantly on the lookout to learn new things, new techniques. You're traveling a lot. You're working around the clock. And, I was starting to age, so I could not do that as a full.
Well, it's intense, right? Like red teaming is very intense, and it's very, as soon as you accomplish something, you've got to go on and move on to the next one.
Oh yeah, it's a dope. And at some point, people come in the game and are just better than you are. I would compare it quite easily to a high level sport, like if you are, I don't know, doing triple jump or I don't know, handball at a super high level, you won't be there forever. You will be there until your 30s or something like this. It's the same, but for the brain, it's super intensive. You love what you do, but at some point you have to move on, carry on, and do some other things. So I went for blue teaming, defensive stuff, hosting, protecting things, and stop to break things. And this is where I was thinking, you know what? Firewalls, as such, brilliant invention. But why would we consider a static rule set? Why would you say like A is good, B is bad? Well, maybe
because it changes every day. It changes all the time. It's fluid. Right?
Absolutely, David. It makes no sense, right? It's like this person that knew him 10 years ago, he was really good at what he's doing. Yeah, sure. But 10 years have passed. You know what? Maybe he's not anymore. And maybe you didn't know everything about him. Maybe he's a drug dealer or a drug baron or something. And maybe he's a very, very bad person. So why would we have a static rule set to defend our online asset? Like saying, this is good, this is bad. It's not accurate, inaccurate depiction of what happens. So around 2002, I wanted to have like dynamic firewalls. I would kind of adapt to what we see instead of just blindly trusting X or Y or Z.
Right.
It was not doable back then. It was just not doable. It was way too early. And then in 2015, 2016, we started to revive the idea with my CTO. It was like, I think now we can pull it. We can do it. We can have like some kind of crowdsourced firewall, something like we would protect the machines. And every time an offense would be detected, we would block it, obviously, but we would share it with the world. We would share it with the servers, with the community to be sure that the others are proactively protected. So if you're patient 0, then the next one is already inoculated or protected,
Right.
And doesn't risk anything. And we're like, yeah, now we can pull it. Now we can do it.
Okay. So, and then you created CrowdSec.
Oh my! If it would be that simple, that would be lovely. No, I could not, because I sold my company and I had some super complicated rule sets around the transactions. So I could not recreate the company for a while. I could not hire my guys for a while.
Sure.
Blah blah blah. Long story short, time passes. The concept is super ripe in my mind, and we started the company in 2019, end of 2019. We were ready. We started the first version. We released the first version around like end of 2020. And the network started to grow. And something helped us tremendously. It's a Log4j vulnerability.
Yes.
So for your diet,
Log4j was huge several years ago, right? Caused a lot of problems. A lot of administrators had to do a lot of work fixing, repairing a lot of systems.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Ever see a data breach in the news and think, what does this mean for me? Or what should my organization do because of that breach? Well, Cybercrime Junkies, we've got exciting news. We all know stories help spread security awareness. So July 1st, we launched season 5 of our podcast with a fresh, exciting twist. Cyber Flashpoints. These will be your go-to source for short segments. You'll see all the ways that storytelling helps you understand cybersecurity and how a podcast can even help keep businesses safe online. Come join us for season 5 and our new Cyber Flashpoint. Hey, before you go, did you know that over 80% of our YouTube viewers don't subscribe to our channel? What is the deal with that? It's free. We don't sell your data, contact you, or spam you. So do us a very important favor. This really matters to us because it's all about that algorithm. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at Cybercrime Junkies Podcast, right there on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and let's make season 5 the best ever.
Yeah, so it was a Java library. Pretty much everybody would potentially use it. They didn't know if they were still using it. Java has this tendency to be extremely resilient. So you put it in production, fire, forget forever until something really nasty happens. Log4j was a nasty thing. It's a 9 out of 9 quake magnitude. I know the scale is open, but it was like terrible. And the guys were like, we don't know. We don't even know if we're vulnerable, but we don't want to find out, right? So fix it. And we're like, okay, well, we know what IP addresses are trying to actually poke a hole in your systems using Log4j. So we're going to share it free, right? We are just a startup. Let's make ourselves a name. We'll give it for free, the IP addresses that are trying to use your system and brute force your Log4j, right? It's a fair deal. It costs you nothing.
Right.
And the network all of a sudden went from 3,000 users to maybe 6,000 users. And some big names like Pentagon or others were using the list to protect themselves. And were like, hey, we're up to something, right? I mean, this crowdsourcing was so much more efficient than any of those large outlet, CTI outlet or whatever.
Yeah, because you're able to share knowledge in real time, right? You're real-time knowledge sharing, and it's public, private institutions, government, and private industry. Which is what everybody talks about. We need to have a public-private, partnership, which government always gets in the way, or private industry gets in the way. So this thing kind of really, really took off right away.
Yes, and I think we really, we are the best humans, David, when we collaborate together.
Absolutely.
In something. Like when we had this crisis with COVID, it was terrible. But by organizing worldwide, we could. Come on, we are free to live again in the street and walk, and this thing is from the past, literally.
Right.
When we wanted to picture a black hole by essence cannot be pictured because it's freaking black, right? It's very dark. Well, we used 100 telescopes over a year until we got a picture of the thing. When we had a problem on the road, Waze was created, and Waze started to be so important that that cities were, planning the way they would reorganize based on the traffic they would see on the way. So crowdsourcing.
Yeah, and if there's any listener that has not tried the Waze app when you're traveling, it is the best because it's crowdsourced, right? You can find real-time traffic. You can find out where the police are, where the speed traps are, where the construction is, where delays are, where there's an accident. It's fantastic. And this kind of operates in the same model in a sense, right? Only for firewalls.
Yeah, they were a role model for us. Like they are really important people. When we thought of our concept, we're like, it's so close to Waze. Instead of sharing the speed, the heading, where you're going, and the position on the map, which is what Waze collect to do its magic, we would collect the timestamp when you were attacked, the behavior, how you were attacked, and the IP addresses that was attacking you, who is attacking you. And with only those three data, we are capable of curating the signal at scale with 250,000 servers working together saying, yeah, I saw it also. Yeah, me too. Well, if all of us saw it, it's not a false positive. It has to be a real thing. So we should broadcast this IP address until it's not nefarious anymore. But for as long as it is nefarious, for as long as it is reported by the network effect, then we should block it altogether.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So how does somebody walk us through what the platform is? I think what you just explained was very good because you identify you have 250,000 servers out there, right? And you timestamp when something happens, the IP address of who the threat actor or attacker is. You describe kind of how they're attacking. Like what is the malware used, etc. And then everybody shares it. And when more and more, when there's a bunch of people doing it, just like Waze, it kind of trends up, right? Like this is happening now, this is happening now. And then after a while, when people stop reporting it, it kind of goes away. Is that kind of how it works?
It's absolutely correct. Because the biggest problem in our industry, David, is like the difference in between intelligence and actionable intelligence.
Right.
So yeah, if I tell you there's a bunch of terrorists in Afghanistan, it's an information. Okay, we'll consider it. So maybe we'll tell the U.S. citizen that don't go right now into this area of the world.
Exactly. The general area. Right.
Yeah, it's a general information. You cannot do much about it. You're not going to send green berets there because you think there is someone.
Correct.
If I tell you at this GPS location, at that time,
there are 5 of them people, right there with something dangerous, right? Then you can go in and say,
strike. Right. So it's actionable.
You can take action.
And it's actionable because it's crowdsourced, because we have enough reports so that it cannot possibly be a false positive, because a false positive is the death of any cybersecurity system. Why that? Because no matter who you talk to, if you say, yeah, well, we have 99.99999 accuracy and we're not broadcasting false positives, the guy will be like, oh my, there is 0.00001% chance that you broadcast me a false IP address, and that in the end, I lose this one transaction that will bring me this $1 billion. Wow, that's too risky. I cannot put it in production. I'm like, you know what? I mean, the odds that you're going to get a gold and someone is going to score on your servers and wreck you for $4 million is like 25%. But the fact that there's 0.0001% that you may lose a transaction of a pair of stock for $20, you prefer to take that risk? Really? Well, then, okay, that's very abstract, but that's the way mind of humans are working. That's all. You don't fight against that. You don't fight against your client's fear. So what you say is like, we have designed a system, and if we give you an IP address, you can block it blindly, because this one has been carrying so many attacks that it cannot possibly be a false positive. And that's how you get out of this, weird cycle.
Well, because all of these people, all of these other entities are voluntarily reporting the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? This is crowdsourced. We are sharing this information for free. We are being attacked by this IP in this way. And you get 10, 15, hundreds of them. Not everybody's lying. It's not a big conspiracy, right? Right. So there is truth in just more and more people, witnessing something.
It's a bit like in a cryptocurrency system. This blockchain, this layer one blockchain, like say Bitcoin or Ethereum, if you would try to rig the system and write something false into the ledger, it would cost you more than what you would get out of it. So I'm not saying CrowdSec cannot be compromised. I'm not saying CrowdSec will never, ever, ever, ever broadcast a false positive. I'm saying that for someone to put a false IP address into our block list, it would cost him so much that it's just not worth it. You would have to spread over like 50 different servers, accounting for at least 10 different autonomous systems, so different areas of the internet. Have passed their quarantine time of 6 months because before that we just don't listen to them. And in the end, eventually stitch a false IP address into the block list, into what we call the consensus of the network, just to lose it over maybe 1 or 2 hours, because we would look into it, right?
Yeah.
And
so is there a timeline? Yeah, is there a timeline that has to happen with this certain type of threat attack, or from that? Or I mean, because it can happen pretty quick, right? Like it can. Yeah. Okay. Because you said over 6 months, and I'm like, it's not like you wait 6 months for something.
Sorry, when you join the network, like if you install Waze, we would not listen to you for the 6 first months because we don't trust you. We would only start to listen to you after 6 months. So if you would want to pull a heist, a trick with our system, you would have to contribute voluntarily and accurately for 6 months before you'd be able to eventually send something that is false.
Yeah. Okay, so
the
that's
ratio
good.
is just not good.
Well, this is because it was designed by hackers, right? Like, you know how a threat actor would think, and they'd be like, well, I'm just going to join real quick, and I'm just going to mess up their system just to do it, right? And no, you have to voluntarily engage in this for 6 months. And like, hackers are going to be like, I can do so much more damage today somewhere else. I'm just going to move on.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the hacker mentality. I love that mentality.
And think about it. Like if you have a network doing, I don't know, DDoS, for example, like the famous DDoSia, Infra Shutdown, Anon Sudan, all of these guys, they have the same system, all of them. It's a master node that is sending a JSON payload to all these followers, saying you should make a get / login request.
Yeah, everybody go and do this. Everybody go do this.
Everybody do this, and then in return, we are giving you some cryptocurrencies.
Right.
Well, the thing is, these networks are very vulnerable. Everybody is dead scared of them. But when you crowdsource, you kill them super easily. Because the first time you receive a packet, okay, you block it, you report it. You block it, you report it. You report it. After a certain amount of time, you have the 3,000, 4,000, 6,000 machines that are involved in this network. All of them are flagged. Right. And the next one that is coming, when they change their focus to another target, is the target using CrowdSec. Well, he's already aware that these 6,000 IP addresses are part of a botnet, and they should never, ever be even listened to. So meaning they block at layer 3, at the firewall, at the connection layer, attacks that would be extremely costly to deal with at layer 7, at applicative layer, because it would involve like some database requests, some CPU processing, and so on and so forth. When you kill them at the network layer, you spare so much resources that it costs you nearly nothing to block a DDoS attack.
So let me ask you this. That's fantastic. That's a good explanation. Let me ask you this. Why haven't other companies, like larger companies, the Palo Altos of the world, the Hewlett Packards of the world, why haven't they developed something like this? Is it because, or the Fortinets, right? Like, is it because they're concerned that it cuts into profit? They don't know how to monetize it? Like, why do you think? I know you're not them, so you can't answer, but just a discussion, right? Like, why isn't this, like, this is a great idea, and it's actually executed very well. So why aren't some of these other organizations doing this? Like, why wasn't this done earlier by some of these big organizations that have 1,000 people already dedicated to something like this?
There's a lot to unfold here, but it's a very interesting question, David. Thank you for that one. So the first thing I would put forward is, like, we are discussing with actors like Microsoft or Cisco or F5, and they are very impressed with what we gather. Like VirusTotal tells us 35% of what you collect, guys, is unknown to any CTI vendor on earth.
Wow.
Eventually, half of it, they start seeing it 2 weeks after. So how come no one did it or did it in this way? The first thing is when you're a Palo Alto client, you're paying Palo Alto. So why on earth would you share things with them on top of that? It's really hard to incentivize your paid client to give you something for free in return, because then they would ask for a discount, they would ask for a lot of things. You could do it in their backs, but they wouldn't like it, and GDPR wise, and there would be regulation that would apply.
Yeah, I was going to say they could try and bury it in the T's and C's, right? They could try and bury it in the fine print, then be like, hey, we're going to still collect this data and share it with everybody. But there, you got GDPR, you've got all these other issues, right?
Doesn't work that much. The second thing is, say you're Google. We have very good relations with Google. Say Google does it. Well, Google don't do it. And we have it from Google itself. But the reason is the following. What they like is a diversity, because CrowdSec is used by like universities in Togo or professionals in Finland or very large corporations in the US, like sweatshops in Thailand, everything. So the diversity of the locations, type of businesses, the technologies they use and so on is immense. It's 185 countries. Okay, countries don't make sense over the internet, but gives you a taste for 100,000 users spread all across the world.
Well, because there's different threat actors that operate and target all these different sectors.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And
right? Like a certain type of threat actor and type of attack that's attacking a sweatshop in Thailand is not necessarily going to be the same one going after Google or going after a manufacturing plant in the US. So you're getting all of that data.
All of those signals. And the thing is, if you're Google, you're incentivized to deploy those probes on your own network, because if you won't start paying AWS or Azure to host your honeypots to collect the data. Here, we don't do this. I mean, our clients are using their CPU, their computing power, their machines, their online connections to process this locally. And we offer a huge diversity that they would never be able to provide in terms of business size, locations, type of traffic they see, and so on. If you want to dodge entirely Google's network or Akamai's network or Cloudflare network, it's super simple. It's like their ranges, their IP ranges are advertised. So you know where you have to dodge.
Right.
A good example is Akamai. They are very, very, very
Who's
strict
that?
on everything.
Who?
Akamai.
Oh, okay.
Akamai is a CDN.
Of course.
If you start poking on their systems, you'll be instantly banned. And your IP will be flagged. So what do they do when they scan? They don't scan Akamai. So if you deploy probes on Akamai's network, you're not going to see the whole thing. You're going to see everybody that is stupid enough to scan the range of Akamai, which arguably for cybercriminals is not so often because they know it by heart, right?
Right. And they know they'll be banned immediately and they'll be flagged.
Exactly. So think about the Fifth Avenue in New York, right? You have cops there, maybe 100. So if you want to do something really bad, like plant a bomb, you will try to be away from the cops, away from the cameras and so on, and plant your stuff, right?
Right.
The problem with CrowdSec is like every other person on the Fifth Avenue is a cops in disguise or as a camera, and you won't know about it.
Yeah, they're all reporting on it. It's almost analogous. Yeah, analogy is like today compared to 20 years ago, everybody has an iPhone. So if something happens, right, if you get into a bar fight, right, now there's going to be 30 eyewitnesses with documented video, right, as opposed to 20 years ago, you could do it and then it's a he said, she said in court. But now you're like, it's not a he said, she said. Everybody has video of it, right? Yeah,
no, absolutely. This is the point of crowdsourcing. It's like you cannot dodge us.
Right.
You cannot rig the consensus. You cannot tamper with it. You cannot say something that is not true. And you cannot dodge us because you don't know where we are. And the third point that is very important is if you try to run some honeypots, which is the classical strategy that was used before us, you would potentially so honeypots for the audience is you put a machine over the internet and say, I'm vulnerable, please attack me. Okay, so I run outdated binaries and websites and God knows what. And you fake that you're vulnerable and you collect attacks. So that's a great way of doing it if you don't have a network, but there are a lot of limitations in this. The first one is it costs you, because every machine you would deploy would cost you around like $20-30 a month. So just in terms of OPEX, you cannot scale, right? It's complicated to scale. If you have to if you want to match, for example, CrowdSec and have 250,000 servers reporting to you, it would cost you 250,000 times $20 a month, which is quite a colossal amount of money, first and foremost. The second thing is you will only catch low-hanging fruits, like the Gatling guns of the internet that are just, painting bullets and spraying them around and praying to get something out of it. But nobody will use an advanced method of breaking into your system or something that would cost them money and resources to compromise a machine that is not tied to any business. I want to attack this business and I want to extort money out of it. I don't want to attack like a random machine that is belonging to no one and has no value, face value for me. So what you see is very different from a honeypot standpoint compared to a realistic network of real users running real services in real life for real companies.
That's fantastic. So let me ask you about the different ways that organizations can leverage CrowdSec. So first of all, it looks like there's a community engagement, right? Like they can come in and they can have unlimited amount of scenarios, and it's kind of based on their level of contribution that then they can get updates, more frequent updates based, the more you contribute and share, the more you can be informed. Is that fair?
It's very close to what we have created, and congratulations for that, because it took me years to figure out the proper balance system, but you're extremely close to it, David, in like just minutes. So the way it works is if you protect against, let's say credential stuffing, credential brute force, credential reuse, impossible travelers, all those things, let's call it the credential ecosystem. So if you run like scenarios of IP addresses that would be credential brute forces, we will send you back once per day for free IPs that are also doing credential brute force somewhere else in the world, because you contribute to establishing this list. So it's just normal and fair game that we pay you back for free with those IP addresses. Now, the next question would be, how do we make money then? We make money by having the global network and overview effect and sending extremely advanced block lists and data to people that may not want to run the system. So maybe they don't want to run the security engine. They just want the data, the output of the network effect.
Right, because can this data be thrown into like a SIM or this threat feed, right? So this is a premium threat feed essentially that is curated by everybody in the world in real time. Pretty powerful. Yes.
And even more than that, because if you put it into a TIP, a TIG, a CM, or anything like this, it is information. But what we do is not only information, we also do block lists, which is proactive. So you can directly inject them into your firewall, and freaking forget.
Yes.
That's the next level. It's not reactive like body counting, like what happened? Oh, let's look into the CM. This IP was known. We should have blocked it. No. Put it into your firewall directly.
You throw it right in. You block it right off the bat. You do it proactively.
Yeah, absolutely. So say if you are a large company, say Apple or Microsoft or something like this, you wanted the data, refine them, torture them in the way you see fit for your infrastructure, and diffuse them the way you want. That's another game. So they take the whole data lake and they do their stuff with it, or they learn from it with Copilot. But if you are a smaller player and you don't want an SMB and you don't want to tinker with I'm not sure if I should put that in production. So, okay, what are you? You're a hospital in Great Britain. Okay. And what do you fear? This, and okay, we have a block list specifically for that. IP addresses that are attacking specifically hospitals on a credential level. And we will add IPs that are specifically aggressive against UK infrastructure. Put this directly into your firewall. This is your magic secret recipe. This is the sauce of your burger. Put it into your firewall. Forget forever about it, because your firewall will then be updated every 5 minutes based on the network effect and what we see at scale.
So, and for listeners, like companies that have trusted this include Deloitte, Microsoft Security Copilot, Google for Startups. Is it the Paris Olympics, the Paris 2024 Olympics, Le Monde, Credit Mutuelle, Arcia. That's the one we were talking about earlier. And then some French things that I took Spanish in school. So sorry. I can't pronounce it. So I don't want to insult everybody. I have lots of friends in France, so I don't want to insult them. I always want to ask, I'm a branding guy. I like logos. I like mascots. What's with the purple dog with the glasses? Who's that? Is that like a dog that you came up with? Did your daughter come up with it? How'd you come up with it?
So good one. The question was like, we have an open source software. So basically when you're an open source company, you have to have an animal, an emblematic animal. So for example, for PHP, it's an elephant.
Is there a rule that says that when you're an open source company, you got to have an animal?
Yeah, it's unsaid, but yes, there is, David. Yeah. For example, if you look Linux, it's a sort of a penguin. It's not really a penguin.
Yeah. You're right. Of course.
Python is a snake, obviously, right?
Yes.
So we decided we would have an alpaca. So they are actually not a llama.
Alpaca. Oh yeah, the alpacas. Yeah.
And alpacas in Peruvian means policeman. And it means policeman because they are keeping the herd together.
It's a policeman animal.
And they prevent them from falling from the cliff.
See, there's a story behind it.
There's a story.
Always a story behind it. I love it, man. That's so cool.
It cannot be alone because we are a crowdsourced system. And if it's two, it's a couple. So there needed to be at least three of them, right?
Right. Well, and alpacas are always in groups.
Oh, yeah. Well, they would die otherwise.
Right.
Yep.
Just like podcast hosts. Just kidding. So that's why we always interview people, because you don't want to hear me talk. So this is really cool.
We have 3 alpacas.
Oh, I love it. I freaking love this. So we're going to have links to the site. It is crowdsec.net. So we'll have links in the show notes. Check this out because it is phenomenal. Now, can organizations join this at no cost? Even like so there's limits. It's kind of like Waze in a sense that you can do the free version and then you get a limited amount, right? And you can do a paid version, you get more data and more actionable insight.
Yes, absolutely. The free version is extremely generous. The free tier is extremely generous. It's meant to be used by the largest number because we consider that if you use the free version, you're paying us with signals. So
right,
you're already paying
exactly.
It's fine for us.
Everybody benefits when you do it.
Yes.
So you can do this for free, and then your information about what you're seeing gets shared with the world, and that's okay.
Yeah, and the point for us is to give you a reason to buy it. We don't consider that it's open source and that would be fair that you buy. No. We have to be the one providing you functionalities that you would love and a good reason to buy them. So what we put in the mix, for example, here is you have a SaaS system, a SaaS companion that can industrialize all of your work with your machines, with your security engine, automate and replicate decisions, tell you if you're under a targeted attack or if it's like just random background noise, things like this, and much, much more. And on the other side of the spectrum, we sell the data to large companies like Cisco, Microsoft, and so on, so they can use them, or SMBs if they want, so they can protect themselves better. So worry not. If
it would help with
product, you're helping us.
Oh yeah, I can see MSSPs using this. It'll help organizations with their application security, with threat hunting. It's really good. And then you also you can protect systems with like the real-time block lists.
Absolutely. And there are, so the limitations of the system, I should be transparent about it, is like we deal with ingress data. So exposed servers over the internet. So that are receiving connection from the internet. We are not dealing with a workstation that are essentially looking for egress. So no, where not to connect. We tell you who not to peer with, whereas egress is who not to connect with proactively yourself. But it's ingress. And another pitfall that you should remember maybe here, 2 of them, we are not CrowdStrike. I'm sorry about what happened to them. Very sorry.
Yes, you are CrowdSec. Yes,
yeah, we had requests at the support. We're like, guys, you destroyed our systems with your XDR. We're like,
were they reaching out to you? Now, hang on. And so we're recording this. This will be released, a couple of weeks later, but we're recording this right after the CrowdStrike incident, which even if you don't know who CrowdStrike is, and I've seen a lot of people that aren't in the security community call it CloudStrike, they're mispronouncing it, or they're calling it CrowdSec by accident. So CrowdStrike is the largest, behemoth of security platforms, and their EDR, their Falcon platform, rolled out an update and caused the blue screen of death to happen, and it crippled industries across the world. So we're not making a comment on that, but the point is people were reaching out to you guys saying, yes, hey, why did you guys, how come I'm stuck in an airport? You guys wrecked us. We're like, no, that's CrowdStrike, not the open source CrowdSec.
Yeah, that was funny and not funny. I mean, mainly for them, because
you gotta laugh. It's in the when you're faced with catastrophe at that scale, how can you not laugh, right? Like you have to laugh at some point because you're like, holy cow, No,
it's terrible for them. I mean, I'm very
it's
sorry
just
for them,
terrible, and everybody means well.
Is rather good.
Yeah, assume good intent. Like people were trying to do the right thing. They didn't, Could they have done things differently? Could they have tested a little?
Surely.
That's the debate, right? That's what's up.
Surely.
Sure.
And the second pitfall is like, remember that on your keyboard, the X and the C are very close to one another. And if you type by mistake an X at the end of our domain name, you're going to end up in a very different place because it would be crowdsex.net instead of crowdsec.net.
Yeah, please don't do that.
No, don't do that.
A good thing I don't have my co-host on because he'd be all over that. So we don't want to do that. So, and then what are you doing with Microsoft Copilot? So walk us through that, because Copilot is something that is really exciting for a lot of organizations. So how are you guys helping with security with Copilot? I see that on the site.
Yeah, they came to us, actually, the guys at Microsoft. This is where they're extremely pragmatic. You can tell Microsoft is pragmatic to the latest bit. They came to us and say, hey, guys, we asked our cybersecurity expert community what data feed they would like to see included into Copilot security. Sure. And your name popped out. So
great.
We looked at your systems and the API was pretty clear. So we used the free plan and integrated it into Copilot for tests, to run tests. Should we show you? Can we show you? Like, yeah, sure. So they are, hey, Copilot, tell us more about IP ABCD. And Copilot started to say, hey, it's coming from Detroit. It's known to do this and this and that for the last couple of weeks. Before that, it was doing this. CrowdStrike recommend that you would block it because it's considered a threat as we speak. And I saw it into your logs here and here and there. And they were like, this is all your data. I mean, except for the log part, everything comes from your API. So should we strike a deal and people can use an API key on your system and add your information feed to Copilot? We're like, heck yeah, they can. Of course they can.
Yeah. That's phenomenal. That's absolutely phenomenal. Oh, that's great. So what's next, and what is some of, is there anything you can share? Are there any stories on new threats that came up that you guys were able to see right away? Like anything with, there's a lot of 0 days that have been happening in the last, there've always been 0 days. I know, I say one thing and then people will comment. They're like, well, technically there were 0 days before. I don't mean that. But like, I always think of the Move It breach, right? Like Move It was massive. That type of thing. Are you guys able to see that as it's happening? It kind of trends up. People start reporting it. What?
Yeah. So when we see a CV that is known, we release a signature very quickly for the engine, and the network starts rolling out the signature automatically. So we start seeing who is exploiting. Say there was one recently about like SSH, and one about like PHP Windows environments.
Correct.
We got a lot of IPs pretty fast, but what is interesting is we rolled out a feature, I don't know, like half a year ago, something like this, called alert context. So you send us the timestamp, the IP address, the behavior. But if you want, optionally, and you have to opt in for that because of GDPR, it would be complicated to explain, but you have to opt in for that. You can send us the context. So if someone is brute forcing your system, David, and is using your email address, we would see in the context that the login would be david.marrow at blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And then the password they want to try, right? So it's not just the behavior, like he's trying to brute force the password. It's a bit more context about the alert. So now what we see with the system, which is super interesting, we see the trends. Sometimes we see people trying things and we're like, it's not a documented CV. What are they trying? Because we don't know about that one. We've never seen this kind of signature. It stands out, right? And this is where, by the way, we're using AI, because when we see something that is standing out from the normal, classical, expected behavior, we're like, hey.
An anomaly, right? You see a trending anomaly.
Exactly. And so then we tell, hey, you know what? This is probably a CVE to come that we don't know yet about.
Right.
And we would share it with specific threat researchers and labs. But I'm thinking about monetizing this, saying, hey, you're this top-notch vulnerability research firm. We have early alert network around, those emerging threats that are not yet known, but we think it's worth digging into it. Let's cut a deal. I don't know what will be the business model yet, but I'm thinking about it.
That's phenomenal. So we encourage everybody, and I mean this, like, check out crowdsec.net. It's just fantastic what you guys are doing. I wish you nothing but the best. This is great. Anything before we wrap up? Any ideas that you can share about what's coming? Anything on the horizon?
Yes, I think what comes in mind is, like, people are training offensive AIs as we speak. They learn from CTF logs, so capture the flag logs, these white hat competitions. So they learn from the humans, from the best on earth, by the way. They learn from CV database. They learn from academic papers. They learn from all of this. And you can compile an AI that is fairly freaking efficient already. And that would unleash hell on you within milliseconds or seconds at best. The thing that I am concerned right now is those AI, they don't have feet and legs, so they cannot move physically toward you. So the only way they can carry their attacks is through IP addresses. Right. So our goal is to neutralize not really the nuclear warhead, the payload, but to neutralize the
effect of it, right?
The vectors.
By spreading awareness and having all these people block it, then they have this warhead, but it can't land anywhere.
Reach the destination, because what we see is, like, the early versions of what we see is, like, usually a human or a smart scanner or stuff like that would narrow down on, trying to be efficient after 15, 20 iterations, poking around, trying to find exactly how to breach you. The AIs we are talking about need 3 to 4 to 5 attempts. So it's much, much faster. So what we want to do is be able, because they still leave trails, right? So what we want to be able to do is to say, hey, this AI is using this kind of range, IP ranges, block it, because we know it's a global offensive AI behind it. And this one is extremely nefarious. And if we can prevent it from being efficient by, ruining its IP ranges before they even reach you, it's already a good thing.
Yeah, that is phenomenal. So that is just absolutely great. So, love what you guys are doing. This will not be the last time that we speak, Philip, and we absolutely wish you guys all the best. We will have links to CrowdSec in the show notes. It is a great community. I see you guys are growing, guys are hiring, reach out to them, engage in this community, because it's a great way for all of us to stay more secure. Thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure, David.
Well, that wraps this up. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our episode. The next one is coming right up. We appreciate you making this an award-winning podcast and downloading on Apple and Spotify and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and we thank you for watching.